Picture this. You're 7 months pregnant, watching your husband's live business conference with 50,000 viewers, when you realize the woman sitting behind him isn't just his business partner, she's his mistress, and everyone in the chat can see it too. Sarah Matthews thought her world was crumbling when her tech billionaire husband told her to act classy in front of the woman he was sleeping with. But Sarah had a secret Jake never knew about before becoming his perfect wife. She was an award-winning investigative journalist who specialized in destroying powerful men who thought they were untouchable. What happened next wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in justice that would cost Jake everything and make Sarah a legend. This is the story of how one woman's classy response brought down a $2 billion empire. Sarah Matthews sat in her home office, watching her husband's face fill the computer screen as 50,000 viewers tuned into MindBridge AI's quarterly conference. At 7 months pregnant, she'd grown accustomed to experiencing Jake's success from the sidelines, but today felt different. Today, she noticed the woman sitting just behind him, Ashley Chen, head of marketing. Sarah had heard the name countless times, always delivered with Jake's trademark enthusiasm for brilliant team members. But seeing her now, positioned perfectly in frame, leaning forward to whisper something that made Jake smile, Sarah felt her stomach drop. The chat exploded with comments. Who's the blonde behind him? She's gorgeous. Is that his wife? No. His wife is pregnant and at home. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the real-time commentary on her marriage. 50,000 strangers were witnessing what she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. The way Ashley's hand lingered on Jake's shoulder, the intimate glances, the coordinated outfits that suggested they'd dressed together that morning. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Watching this presentation could make us billionaires. Babe, love you. The casual lie felt like a slap. Sarah watched Ashley lean in again, her lips nearly touching Jake's ear. The camera caught it all. The chat noticed too. Definitely not business appropriate. Someone's getting fired or promoted. Plot twist incoming. Sarah's investigative journalism instincts, dormant since she'd given up her career 3 years ago, suddenly roared to life. She'd won awards for exposing corruption, for following money trails that others missed. But she'd traded her Pulitzer nomination for marriage to a tech genius who promised her a different kind of fulfillment. The presentation ended with thunderous virtual applause. Jake's company was valued at $2 billion. The IPO would make them incredibly wealthy. But as Sarah watched her husband and Ashley exchange a look that spoke of shared secrets, she realized she might not be part of that future. Her phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. Sarah, did you see that the investors are going crazy? We're going to be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I saw, Sarah said quietly. Ashley seems very supportive. A pause. Then Jake's voice, cooler now. She's an incredible asset to the team. You'd understand if you still worked in a professional environment. The casual cruelty was so familiar that Sarah almost didn't register it. Almost. Jake, I gave up my career to support yours. We agreed. And I'm grateful. But sometimes I think you don't understand the pressure I'm under. This IPO could change everything for us. For our son, I need team members I can rely on completely. Like Ashley. Exactly like Ashley. No hesitation. No acknowledgement of how that sounded. Look, I'll be home late tonight. Big celebration with the team. You understand? After he hung up, Sarah sat in the growing darkness of her office, feeling their son kick restlessly inside her. She understood, all right. She understood that her husband was having an affair, and 50,000 people had just watched it happen in real time. But Jake had made one crucial mistake. He'd forgotten that before she became his supportive wife. Sarah Matthews had been a journalist who specialized in destroying powerful men who thought they were untouchable. Her laptop still glowed with the frozen final frame of the conference. Jake and Ashley, side by side, looking like the power couple they apparently were. Sarah opened a new document and began typing. If Jake wanted to play this game publicly, she'd give him a performance he'd never forget. The investigation began that night. 3 weeks of digging revealed a web of deception that stunned even Sarah's experienced eye. Jake hadn't just betrayed their marriage, he'd been systematically defrauding investors, manipulating user data, and using MindBridge's AI technology to conduct illegal insider trading. Ashley wasn't just his mistress. She was his co-conspirator, helping him create fake user engagement metrics to inflate the company's value before the IPO. Every presentation, every investor meeting, every glowing tech article was built on fabricated data. Sarah's old contacts at the Washington Post were interested. Very interested. Her former editor, Marcus Webb, had agreed to meet her at a small cafe in Georgetown, but first, she had to survive tonight's dinner. "Sarah, darling, you remember Ashley Chen from the company?" Jake said, his arm draped possessively around Ashley's waist as they entered the dining room of their Potomac mansion. Ashley smiled, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Mrs. Matthews, Jake talks about you constantly. You must be so excited about the baby." The condescension was expertly delivered. Ashley wore a sleek black dress that emphasized her flat stomach, her youth, her freedom from the burden of pregnancy. Sarah smoothed her maternity dress, feeling every bit the discarded wife. "It's our anniversary," Sarah said quietly. 6 years today." "How romantic," Ashley cooed. "Jake thought it would be nice to include me since we're announcing the IPO date tomorrow. I hope you don't mind sharing your special evening." Jake moved to the bar, his back to them both. "Ashley's been working day and night on this launch. She deserves to celebrate too." Sarah watched her husband pour 3 glasses of champagne, setting the third aside for her with pointed emphasis on her condition. "Of course. Team celebration." During dinner, Ashley dominated the conversation with talk of market strategies and investor enthusiasm. Jake hung on every word, occasionally reaching across the table to touch Ashley's hand while discussing their vision for the company. Sarah had built MindBridge's initial business plan. She'd written the first investor pitches, designed the original user interface, even came up with the name during a late-night brainstorming session. But sitting at her own dining table, she felt like a stranger observing someone else's success story. "Sarah, you're awfully quiet tonight," Ashley said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Pregnancy can be so overwhelming. Jake was just telling me how emotional you've been lately." Jake's face flushed. "Ashley, that's not—" "It's fine," Sarah interrupted. "Yes, I have been emotional. It's hard watching your life's work succeed while you're sidelined." "Life's work." Ashley laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "But you haven't worked in years. This is Jake's company, Jake's vision. I'm just helping him realize his full potential." The room fell silent. Jake stared at his plate, unwilling to defend his wife's contributions. Ashley smiled triumphantly, knowing she'd landed a killing blow. That's when Jake delivered the line that would change everything. As Sarah rose to clear the plates, her face carefully composed despite the rage building inside her, Jake caught her wrist. His grip was firm, almost painful. "Sarah," he said, his voice low but clearly audible to Ashley, "what did we discuss about tonight? This is important business. Stop looking so miserable and act classy for once." Act classy. In front of his mistress, on their anniversary, while carrying his child. Sarah looked down at Jake's hand on her wrist. then at Ashley's satisfied smirk. Something crystallized in that moment, cold and sharp and absolutely unforgiving. "You're absolutely right, Jake," Sarah said, her voice suddenly clear and strong. "I should act classy." She walked calmly to her purse, retrieved her phone, and opened the voice recording app she'd started when they sat down for dinner. Every word of the evening was captured. "Ashley," Sarah said sweetly, "I think there's something you should know about the man you're sleeping with. And Jake, there's something you should know about the journalist you married." She held up her phone, the recording timestamp showing 43 minutes and counting. "You want classy? Let me show you how a real professional handles business." Sarah's meeting with Marcus Webb at the Washington Post had gone perfectly. Too perfectly. The veteran editor had listened to her evidence, examined the documents she'd meticulously gathered, and agreed to fast-track the story. Within 48 hours, they'd have enough to destroy Jake's IPO and likely send him to prison. She'd felt invincible, walking back to her car, clutching the flash drive containing copies of everything. Financial records, email communications, recorded phone calls. 3 years of investigative work compressed into a story that would make her career and end Jake's. But Jake had been watching. Sarah arrived home to find 2 police officers standing in her living room. Jake sat on the couch, his face a mask of concerned devastation. Her sister Emma stood beside him, her federal prosecutor credentials giving weight to whatever story they'd concocted. "Mrs. Matthews," the older officer said gently, "we need to discuss some concerning behavior that's been reported." "Concerning behavior?" Sarah's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" Jake stood slowly, his performance carefully calibrated. "Sarah, honey, we're worried about you. The paranoid accusations, the erratic behavior. Dr. Richardson thinks it might be pregnancy-related psychosis." "Dr. Richardson." Sarah's mind raced. She'd seen the psychiatrist exactly once, months ago, for routine prenatal mental health screening. "You've been making serious allegations against prominent business leaders," Emma said, her prosecutor's voice cold and professional. "False accusations of financial crimes based on what appear to be fabricated documents." The world tilted. "Emma, those documents are real. You know I wouldn't, do I?" Emma's eyes were hard. "You've been isolated, paranoid, convinced everyone is plotting against you. Jake's shown me the emails you've been sending to journalists, the wild conspiracy theories about his company." Sarah pulled out her phone to show them the recordings, the evidence. The screen was black, dead. She pressed the power button frantically. Nothing. "Looking for this." Jake held up a similar device. "You left your real phone downstairs when you went to shower this morning. This old one has been dead for weeks. The recording, the evidence from dinner, it had all been captured on a broken phone." "The flash drive," Sarah whispered. "I have copies." "You mean this?" Emma produced Sarah's purse, the hidden compartment hanging open and empty. "There's nothing here. Sarah, you've been carrying around empty drives, talking to imaginary contacts." "That's not true." Sarah's voice rose to a near scream. "Marcus Webb, Washington Post. Call him." The younger officer consulted his notes. "Ma'am, we did check. The Washington Post has no record of you meeting with any editor. In fact, they have a restraining order against you for harassing their staff with delusional claims." The room spun. Sarah grabbed the back of a chair, her pregnant belly making balance difficult. "This isn't happening. You're all lying." "Sarah." Jake's voice was gentle, loving, the perfect concerned husband. "You've been living in a fantasy world. The stress of pregnancy, losing your career, feeling displaced by my success. Dr. Richardson explained it all. We're here to help, Emma added. Voluntary 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. You'll get the help you need, and the baby will be safe. The baby! Sarah's hands flew to her stomach. You can't take my baby. We're not taking anything, Jake soothed. We're protecting both of you. You're 7 months pregnant and completely disconnected from reality. What if you hurt yourself? What if you hurt him? The officers moved closer, their hands resting casually on their equipment, not threatening, but ready. Mrs. Matthews, the older officer said, this can be easy or difficult, your choice. Sarah looked around the room, seeking an ally, an escape, anything. But Jake had planned perfectly. Her sister, a federal prosecutor, giving credibility to his claims. Police officers treating her like a dangerous mental patient. Her evidence mysteriously vanished. Her contacts unreachable. Even her own mind began to doubt. Had she imagined the meeting with Marcus? Were the documents real? The pregnancy hormones? The stress? The isolation? Maybe she really was losing her grip on reality. I want to call my lawyer, she whispered. You can call anyone you want from the facility, Emma said. Right now, we need you to come with us. As they escorted her to the police car, Sarah caught sight of Ashley Chen pulling into the driveway. The other woman didn't even try to hide her satisfied smile as she watched Sarah's public humiliation. Jake stood in the doorway, playing the role of devastated husband to perfection. But for just a moment, as the car door closed, Sarah saw his real expression, pure, calculating triumph. The psychiatric facility was clean, quiet, and absolutely terrifying. Sarah's protests about the evidence, the conspiracy, Jake's crimes, only reinforced their diagnosis of pregnancy-induced psychosis with paranoid delusions. Her first devastating blow was complete. She was trapped, discredited, and powerless while Jake prepared to become a billionaire with his mistress by his side. But Sarah Matthews hadn't survived as an investigative journalist by giving up when things looked impossible. She just needed to get classy about her revenge. The Meadowbrook Psychiatric Facility specialized in what they called gentle intervention for expectant mothers experiencing mental health crises. Sarah's room was painted in soothing pastels, with motivational posters about healing and finding peace. The windows were locked. The door required a key card she didn't possess. Dr. Ellen Richardson was a thin woman with kind eyes and an unshakable belief in her own competence. She reviewed Sarah's file during their first session, occasionally glancing up with practiced sympathy. Pregnancy-induced psychosis isn't uncommon, Dr. Richardson explained. The hormonal changes, combined with your history of high-stress journalism work, have created a perfect storm of paranoid delusions. They're not delusions, Sarah said carefully. She'd learned to modulate her voice, to sound rational despite the fury burning inside her. My husband is committing securities fraud. I have documentation. Sarah, you showed police officers empty flash drives. You claimed to have meetings that never happened. Your own sister, a federal prosecutor, confirmed that your allegations are baseless. The doctor's certainty was absolute. Sarah realized that fighting the diagnosis would only extend her imprisonment. Instead, she needed to appear to be recovering while actually planning her escape. You're right, Sarah said softly. I think the stress of Jake's success, combined with the pregnancy, made me create this elaborate fantasy where I was still important, still the investigative journalist who could save the day. Dr. Richardson's face lit up. That's an incredible breakthrough. Sarah, recognizing the psychological need behind the delusions is the first step toward healing. Over the following days, Sarah played the role of recovering patient perfectly. She attended group therapy sessions where she talked about letting go of control and accepting my new role as a supportive wife. She took the prescribed antipsychotic medications and pretended they were helping clear her thoughts. But late at night, when the facility was quiet, Sarah's real work began. Her roommate was a teenager named Mia who'd been committed for drug-related issues. Mia had something Sarah desperately needed: a contraband cell phone. "I'll give you my commissary money for a week," Sarah whispered during their second night together. "I just need to make one call." "What's worth that much?" Mia asked suspiciously. "Proving I'm not crazy." The call was to David Park, a freelance investigative journalist who'd worked with Sarah on several major exposés. If anyone would believe her, it would be David. "Sarah Jesus, where are you? I heard you were in some kind of facility." "David, listen carefully. I'm in psychiatric hold, but I'm not crazy. Jake is running a massive fraud through Mindbridge AI, securities violations, manipulated data, the works." Silence. Then, "Sarah, your sister called me last week. She said you'd been having paranoid episodes, that you might try to contact your old journalist friends with wild conspiracy theories." Sarah's heart sank. Emma had been thorough, poisoning every well before Sarah could drink from it. "David, you know me. When have I ever fabricated a story?" "Never," he admitted. "But pregnancy can do strange things to people's minds, and your sister seemed genuinely worried. What if I could prove it real evidence, not the fake stuff they claim I was carrying around?" Another pause. "How?" "Jake thinks I'm neutralized. He's not being careful anymore. If I could get you inside Mindbridge, into their servers." "Sarah, stop. I can't help you break into a company based on psychiatric patient allegations. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, feeling her second devastating blow land with crushing force. Even her closest professional ally had been turned against her. Emma's credentials, Jake's performance, and the medical establishment's diagnosis had created an impenetrable wall of doubt. But as Sarah lay in her narrow bed, feeling her son kick restlessly inside her, she realized Jake had made one crucial error. He'd assumed that destroying her credibility would destroy her capabilities. He was wrong. Sarah had spent her career exposing powerful men who thought they were untouchable. She'd learned to work in shadows, to find truth where others saw only lies. And now, she had the most powerful motivation of all, protecting her unborn child from a father who was both a criminal and a master manipulator. The next morning, Sarah began laying the groundwork for the most important investigation of her career. But this time, she wouldn't trust anyone else with the evidence. She would become her own source, her own witness, and ultimately, her own justice. "Dr. Richardson," she said during their session that day, "I think I'm ready to go home and support my husband properly. I want to be the wife he deserves." The psychiatrist smiled. "That's wonderful progress. Sarah, let's talk about a release timeline." Sarah smiled back, her expression serene and cooperative. Inside, her journalist's mind was already planning Jake's destruction. "Act classy," he'd said. She was about to show him exactly how classy she could be. Sarah's release from Meadowbrook came with conditions: weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Richardson, daily check-ins with a social worker, and most crucially, a court order requiring Jake's consent before she could travel, work, or make any major decisions. He'd effectively made her a prisoner in her own life. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Jake said as he helped her from the car. His performance was flawless, the devoted husband caring for his fragile wife. Neighbors watched from their windows, no doubt sympathizing with his burden. Ashley's BMW was parked in the driveway. She'd moved in during Sarah's absence, claiming it was temporary and to help with the household while Sarah recovered. The house felt alien now. Ashley's modern artwork had replaced Sarah's carefully chosen pieces. Her sleek furniture dominated the living spaces. Even the master bedroom bore traces of the other woman, a different perfume in the air, unfamiliar jewelry on the dresser. Ashley's been such a help, Jake continued as they entered the house. Managing the household, handling my schedule. The IPO preparations are incredibly demanding. Ashley appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing one of Sarah's silk robes. Sarah, you look so much better. Rest is exactly what you needed. The casual appropriation of her clothing, her home, her life was breathtaking in its audacity. But Sarah had learned the value of restraint. Thank you for taking care of everything, Sarah said warmly. I'm sure Jake couldn't have managed without you. Over the following weeks, Sarah played the role of grateful, recovering wife. She attended her therapy sessions, took her medications, and smiled serenely while Ashley publicly claimed credit for MindBridge's success. The tech press called Ashley the brilliant woman behind the AI revolution. Sarah's original contributions had been completely erased from the company's history. But Sarah was working. Every therapy session with Dr. Richardson was recorded on a device hidden in her purse. Every conversation with Jake and Ashley was captured by nearly invisible recording equipment she'd purchased online. She documented financial transactions, photographed documents Jake left carelessly around the house, and slowly rebuilt her evidence cache. Most importantly, she discovered Jake's fatal flaw, his arrogance. With Sarah neutralized and Ashley handling public relations, Jake had grown sloppy. He conducted incriminating phone calls from his home office. He left his laptop unlocked while showering. He discussed illegal activities openly, convinced that his crazy wife posed no threat. Sarah's big break came during a dinner party Jake hosted for major investors. Hidden in the kitchen, officially banned from the dining room because Sarah isn't quite ready for social situations, she recorded everything. The beauty of our AI system, Jake explained to the assembled millionaires, is that it doesn't just analyze market trends, it creates them. We can influence individual trading decisions across thousands of users simultaneously. That sounds like market manipulation, one investor said nervously. Only if you get caught. Ashley laughed. And our algorithms are too sophisticated for SEC detection. We're essentially printing money. Jake's voice was confident, boastful. By next quarter, we'll control enough user data to swing entire market sectors. The IPO is just the beginning. Sarah clutched her recording device, hardly believing Jake's stupidity. He was confessing to securities fraud, market manipulation, and conspiracy in front of a dozen witnesses, all because he thought his crazy wife was too medicated and defeated to matter. The next morning, Sarah felt genuinely hopeful for the first time in months. She had evidence, real, undeniable proof of Jake's crimes, and she knew exactly who to call. Agent Jennifer Walsh of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Unit had worked with Sarah during her journalism career. If anyone would listen to her evidence objectively, it would be Jen. Agent Walsh, this is Sarah Matthews. I know my situation is complicated, but I need you to hear something. The recorded dinner party conversation played over the phone. Sarah listened to the silence that followed, hoping against hope that Jen would believe her. Sarah, Jen's voice was careful, professional. This recording, where did you get it? My home. Jake hosted an investor dinner last night. I was there. According to the information I have, you're currently under psychiatric care for paranoid delusions involving your husband's business. Sarah's heart began to race. Jen, you know my work. You know I don't fabricate evidence. I know the Sarah Matthews from 3 years ago was an excellent journalist, but mental health issues can develop quickly. especially during pregnancy. Listen to the recording again. That's Jake's voice, Ashley's voice. You can verify the investor attendees through restaurant reservations, parking records. Sarah, I received a call from your sister last month. She warned me you might contact law enforcement with fabricated evidence. She said you've become expert at voice manipulation software. The words hit like physical blows. Emma had been even more thorough than Sarah realized, poisoning every potential ally before Sarah could reach them. Voice manipulation. Sarah's voice cracked. Jen, I recorded that conversation last night. Check the metadata. Analyze the audio. Audio analysis isn't conclusive anymore. AI can create incredibly convincing fake recordings. Given your journalism background and current mental state, Sarah understood. No one would believe her because everyone already knew she was crazy. The psychiatric hold hadn't just silenced her, it had made her invisible. What would it take? Sarah asked desperately. What evidence would convince you? Sarah, you need to focus on getting better. Leave the law enforcement to professionals. The line went dead. Sarah sat in her car outside the coffee shop where she'd made the call, feeling her second false victory crumble into ash. Even with solid evidence, her credibility was so damaged that no one would listen. But as she drove home, past the billboards advertising Mindbridge's upcoming IPO, past the tech blogs calling Jake a visionary, Sarah realized something important. She didn't need anyone to believe her. She just needed to destroy Jake so completely that belief became irrelevant. The third and final phase of her plan would require tools that went far beyond journalism. It was time to get truly classy. Sarah's breakthrough came during her routine prenatal appointment at Georgetown Medical Center. Dr. Patricia Reeves had been her obstetrician for 2 years, and unlike everyone else in Sarah's life, she seemed immune to the crazy pregnant woman narrative. Your blood pressure is concerning, Dr. Reeves said, reviewing the test results. Are you under unusual stress? My husband is committing massive financial fraud. His mistress is living in my house, and everyone thinks I'm psychotic, Sarah said flatly. How's my stress level supposed to be? Dr. Reeves looked up sharply. Sarah, are you taking your psychiatric medications? Every day. They don't change the facts. The doctor studied Sarah's face carefully. Tell me about these facts. For the first time in months, Sarah had an audience who listened without prejudgment. Dr. Reeves was a medical professional, trained to assess symptoms objectively. She'd seen enough genuinely psychotic patients to recognize the difference between delusion and reality. Can you prove any of this, Dr. Reeves asked after Sarah finished her explanation. I have recordings, documents, financial records, but no one will examine them because they think I'm fabricating everything. What if someone with unquestioned credibility examined your evidence? Sarah's heart jumped. Who, my brother-in-law, Thomas Chen, is a federal judge. If your evidence is genuine, he'd be obligated to act on it. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Another Chen might save her from Ashley Chen's conspiracy. But Dr. Reeves continued speaking. However, if your evidence is fabricated or if you're experiencing delusions, he'll have you committed permanently. Are you willing to take that risk? Sarah didn't hesitate. Yes. 3 days later, Sarah sat in Judge Thomas Chen's private chambers, feeling like her entire future hung on the next hour. The judge was a thin, severe man with a reputation for absolute integrity and zero tolerance for frivolous cases. Mrs. Matthews, my sister-in-law is concerned about your mental state. She believes you're experiencing pregnancy-related psychosis with elaborate paranoid fantasies. Your Honor, I respectfully ask that you examine my evidence before accepting that diagnosis. Sarah had organized everything meticulously. Financial records showing the shell corporations Jake used to hide losses. Email communications detailing the fake user data. The recorded dinner party where Jake confessed to market manipulation. Bank statements proving Ashley's embezzlement. Judge Chen spent 2 hours reviewing everything. He asked pointed questions, cross-referenced documents, and verified digital metadata. His expression remained neutral throughout the process. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Matthews, if this evidence is authentic, your husband is facing multiple federal charges with potential sentences exceeding 20 years. The evidence is authentic, Your Honor. The problem is proving that in court. Defense attorneys will argue that a psychiatric patient with your technical background could fabricate sophisticated false evidence. Sarah's heart sank. Even a federal judge couldn't see past her damaged credibility. However, Judge Chen continued, there's one piece of evidence that would be impossible to fabricate. What's that? Live testimony from a credible witness. Someone who could verify your claims in real time, under oath, with no possibility of digital manipulation? Sarah's mind raced. All the witnesses are either conspirators or they think I'm crazy. Not all of them, Judge Chen said quietly. Your sister, Emma Walsh, is a federal prosecutor with an impeccable reputation. If she were to discover evidence of your husband's crimes independently, Emma's been helping Jake discredit me. She warned everyone I might contact them. Yes, I've seen her statements. But what if Emma learned the truth? Judge Chen opened a thick legal book and pointed to a specific statute. Under federal whistleblower protection laws, if a prosecutor discovers evidence of ongoing financial crimes, they're legally obligated to investigate, regardless of the source. Emma won't listen to me. She doesn't have to listen to you. She just needs to witness the crimes herself. Sarah stared at the judge, understanding dawning. You want me to trick Emma into discovering Jake's evidence herself? I want you to create a situation where the truth becomes undeniable, even to someone predisposed to doubt you. Judge Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Matthews, I'm going to issue a sealed warrant for surveillance of your husband's business communications. If federal prosecutors discover evidence through legitimate investigation, that evidence will be admissible regardless of how they were directed to it. A sealed warrant. Invisible to your husband and his attorneys. Valid for 30 days. After that, if no credible evidence emerges, the warrant expires and this conversation never happened. Sarah felt hope flutter in her chest for the first time in weeks. What do I need to do? Nothing illegal, nothing that could be construed as entrapment. Simply create an opportunity for your sister to witness your husband's crimes directly. As Sarah left the courthouse, her mind was already working. Jake's greatest weakness was his arrogance. He'd confessed to crimes before because he thought he was safe. Now Sarah just needed to arrange for Emma to be listening when he confessed again. The plan would require perfect timing, flawless execution, and a level of acting that would make Ashley Chen look like an amateur. But for the first time since her nightmare began, Sarah had something more powerful than evidence. She had hope, and she had 30 days to save both her reputation and her son's future. The real performance was about to begin. Emma Walsh arrived at Sarah's house on a rainy Thursday evening, carrying Chinese takeout and wearing the expression of a dutiful sister visiting her mentally ill sibling. Sarah had carefully orchestrated the invitation, timing it for when Jake would be conducting his weekly investor update call from his home office. You look better, Emma said, though her tone suggested professional assessment rather than genuine warmth. The medications are helping. Dr. Richardson says I'm making excellent progress, Sarah replied, playing the role of grateful patient. I wanted to apologize for all the trouble I caused, the paranoid accusations, the harassment of your colleagues. I'm so embarrassed. Emma relaxed slightly. Mental health issues aren't your fault. Sarah, the important thing is that you're getting better. They settled in the living room with their food. Sarah had positioned them carefully close enough to Jake's office that his voice would carry, but far enough away that Emma wouldn't suspect deliberate eavesdropping. Is Jake home? Emma asked, glancing toward the hallway. He's on an important business call. Some kind of investor update. Ashley's been helping him prepare all week. On cue, Jake's voice rose from the office. His door was slightly ajar, which he preferred during low-stakes calls. Sarah had discovered that he was more likely to speak freely when he thought he had privacy, but not complete isolation. The beauty of our user engagement numbers, Jake was saying, is that they're completely controlled by our algorithms. We can show exactly the level of activity that maximizes investor confidence. Emma paused with her chopsticks halfway to her mouth. What did he just say? Sarah feigned confusion. About the algorithms, I don't really understand his business talk. Jake's voice continued, growing more animated as he warmed to his subject. Our AI doesn't just predict user behavior, it creates user behavior, fake accounts, artificial transactions, whatever metrics we need to justify our valuation. Emma set down her food entirely. As a federal prosecutor, she recognized securities fraud when she heard it. Sarah, is Jake talking about fabricating user data? I wouldn't know, Sarah said carefully. I'm not involved in his business anymore. Ashley's voice joined the conversation from Jake's office. The SEC compliance team has been asking questions about our engagement ratios. Should I be concerned? Let them ask, Jake laughed. They're looking for traditional fraud patterns. Our AI-generated data is indistinguishable from authentic user activity. It's not like we're cooking books with a calculator. Emma stood up abruptly. Sarah, I need to... The Chinese food's getting cold, Sarah interrupted gently. Jake's always talking about technical stuff. It probably sounds worse than it is. But Emma's prosecutor instincts were fully activated. She moved closer to the hallway, her training taking over. Sarah followed, maintaining her confused wife persona while internally celebrating. What about the IPO roadshow? Ashley was asking. Some investors have been requesting raw data verification. We'll give them exactly what they want to see, Jake replied. Our fabricated metrics are more convincing than most companies' real data. Hell, we've made our fake users more engaged than actual humans. Emma turned to Sarah, her face pale. How long has he been having conversations like this? Like what? Sarah asked innocently. About computers and algorithms, about fraud, Sarah, securities fraud, market manipulation. Emma, you said I was being paranoid when I thought Jake was doing something illegal. The words hung between them. Emma stared at her sister, understanding dawning that her delusional sibling might have been telling the truth all along. Jake's voice rose again, apparently addressing a question from someone on the call. Look, every tech company inflates their numbers to some degree. We've just perfected the art. By the time the SEC figures out what we're doing, we'll have completed the IPO and moved the money offshore. Offshore, Emma whispered. Our Cayman accounts are already established, Ashley added helpfully. Jake's been moving preliminary funds there for months. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. How long have you known about this? Known about what? Sarah maintained her innocent expression. Emma, you told me I was imagining things. Dr. Richardson explained that pregnancy hormones can cause paranoid thinking. Forget what I said before. Emma's voice was sharp, urgent. Right now. Today. What have you observed about Jake's business practices? Sarah appeared to consider the question carefully. Well, he does work very late, and Ashley's been living here, which seems unprofessional. Sometimes I hear them talking about money and computers, but I assumed it was normal business. What else? Nothing specific, just the way they laugh when they talk about investors, like it's all a joke. From the office came the sound of Jake ending his call. Emma grabbed her purse and pulled out her phone. I need to make some calls, she said urgently. About what? Sarah, I think you might have been right all along. About everything. The transformation was remarkable. In less than an hour, Emma had gone from skeptical sister managing a delusional patient to federal prosecutor recognizing a major criminal enterprise. And most importantly, she discovered the evidence herself, making it legally admissible regardless of Sarah's mental health status. What should I do? Sarah asked, perfectly playing the confused wife seeking guidance. Nothing. Don't let Jake know you heard anything. Don't change your behavior. I'm going to need you to be very brave. Sarah, but I think we can fix this. As Emma left to begin her investigation, Sarah felt her third false victory beginning. For the first time in months, she had an ally with both the credibility and authority to act on her evidence. But Sarah had learned to be cautious about hope. Jake and Ashley were far more dangerous than even Emma realized, and they were about to discover that their biggest threat wasn't a crazy pregnant woman. It was the federal prosecutor who'd finally learned the truth. Sarah woke to the sound of her front door closing at 3 a.m. Jake's footsteps on the stairs were heavier than usual, accompanied by muffled voices. She listened from the bedroom as he and Ashley whispered urgently in the hallway. How much does she know? Ashley's voice was sharp with panic. Emma, everything. Apparently, she's been investigating for the past week. Sarah's blood ran cold. Jake knew about Emma's investigation. How is that possible? Ashley demanded. You said your wife was neutralized, that everyone thought she was crazy. She was. She is. But somehow Emma got suspicious anyway. Sarah slipped from bed and crept to the bedroom door, pressing her ear against the wood. In the week since Emma had overheard Jake's incriminating call, Sarah had been playing the perfect recovering wife while Emma built her federal case. Everything had been proceeding exactly as planned, until now. We need to accelerate the timeline, Jake said. Move all the money tonight. Complete the offshore transfers and disappear before Emma can get warrants. What about the IPO? Forget the IPO. We'll take what we can get and run. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. If Jake fled now, Emma's investigation would be meaningless. Worse, he might try to take their unborn son. There's another problem, Ashley said quietly. What if Sarah really has been recording us? What if she's not as crazy as we thought? A long pause. Then Jake's voice, cold and calculating. Then we neutralize her permanently. The words sent ice through Sarah's veins. She backed away from the door, her pregnant belly making silent movement difficult. Jake wasn't just planning to flee, he was planning to destroy her. How? Ashley asked. Car accident. Tragic loss of pregnant wife and child due to mental health crisis. Very sad. Very believable. Jake, that's murder. That's survival. Sarah knows too much, and she's unpredictable. We can't risk her recovering enough credibility to be believed. Sarah fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she tried to call Emma. The line went straight to voicemail. Emma, it's Sarah. Emergency. Jake knows about your investigation. He's planning to kill me and run tonight. Please. I need... The phone was yanked from her hands. Jake stood in the bedroom doorway, his face a mask of cold fury. Behind him, Ashley held what looked like a syringe. Hello, darling. Jake said softly. Trouble sleeping. Jake, I was just recording us, calling your sister, playing the victim again. Sarah backed toward the window, her mind racing. I don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Richardson's medications, Ashley said, advancing with the syringe. A tragic overdose. Pregnant women sometimes can't handle the stress of mental illness treatment. You can't do this, Sarah whispered. Emma knows everything. Killing me won't save you. Emma knows what we allowed her to discover, Jake corrected. Carefully edited information that makes her feel clever while missing the real scope of our operation. The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. You wanted her to investigate. We needed a fall guy for the minor fraud charges. Emma will find evidence of small-scale securities violations, enough to satisfy the SEC and make everyone feel justice was served. Meanwhile, the real money, $200 million in cryptocurrency, will be safely offshore. And I'm the perfect tragic victim, Sarah realized. The whistleblower wife who died before she could see justice. Finally understanding the game. Ashley smiled. Though it took you long enough. Jake moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. You were always too smart for your own good, Sarah. But you made one crucial mistake. You thought this was about the affairs, the lies, the disrespect. You never realized it was about the money. All of it. Every moment since we met. Your journalism credentials gave me credibility with early investors. Your industry contacts helped me identify targets. Your reputation opened doors that stayed closed to unknown tech entrepreneurs. The devastation was total. Not just their marriage, but their entire relationship had been a calculated fraud. Sarah had been a tool, nothing more. The pregnancy, she whispered. Insurance policy, Jake said casually. Pregnant wives get sympathy, not scrutiny. And if you ever became a threat, well, tragic accidents happen to unstable, expectant mothers. Ashley raised the syringe. This will be quick. Overdose. Followed by a car accident to make it look like a suicide attempt gone wrong. Sarah pressed against the window, feeling the glass cold against her back. 8 months pregnant. Trapped in her own bedroom by her husband and his accomplice. No escape, no rescue coming, no one who would even question her death. But as Ashley stepped forward, Sarah remembered something Jake had overlooked in his perfect plan. You're right, Sarah said suddenly. I was too smart for my own good. Jake paused, suspicious of her calm tone. But you made one crucial mistake too, Sarah continued. You assumed I was working alone. What are you talking about? Sarah smiled, and for the first time in months, it was genuine. You really think Emma got suspicious just from overhearing one phone call? You think she built a federal case in 1 week based on paranoid tips from her crazy sister? Jake's face went pale. That's impossible. Judge Thomas Chen issued a sealed surveillance warrant 3 weeks ago. Every phone call, every email, every conversation in this house has been recorded by federal equipment. Emma didn't discover your crimes by accident. Jake, she was directed to discover them. Ashley lowered the syringe, her face crumbling. No, that's not possible. The Crazy Wife Act was pretty convincing. Don't you think took me years to perfect that level of helpless confusion? Sarah reached into her nightstand and pulled out a small device. But the best performance was making you think you were smarter than me. The device in her hand was a panic button, directly connected to the FBI surveillance team that had been monitoring the house for weeks. You wanted me to act classy, Jake. Here's classy federal agents are already surrounding the house. Your offshore accounts have been frozen. Your cryptocurrency wallets have been seized. and everything you just confessed to killing me is being recorded by the Justice Department." The sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the bedroom windows. "FBI, open the door!" Jake stared at Sarah with a mixture of horror and grudging admiration. "You magnificent bitch! That's Special Agent Sarah Matthews to you," Sarah replied. "Did I forget to mention Emma got me reinstated as a federal consultant 3 days ago? Turns out there's a big difference between psychiatric patient and undercover operative." As federal agents burst into the room, Sarah watched Jake and Ashley's empire crumble in real time. Their perfect crime had been undone by the one person they'd underestimated most, the classy wife they thought they'd destroyed. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the witness box of the federal courthouse, holding her 4-month-old son, Alexander. The courtroom was packed with journalists, investors, and victims of Jake's elaborate fraud scheme. What had begun as a tech IPO story had evolved into one of the largest financial crimes prosecuted in recent years. Judge Thomas Chen presided over the sentencing hearing with the same careful attention he'd shown during Sarah's private meeting months earlier. His sealed warrant had provided the legal foundation for everything that followed. "Mr. Montgomery," Judge Chen addressed Jake, who sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his transformation from tech billionaire to federal prisoner complete. "Your crimes represent a fundamental betrayal of trust that reaches far beyond simple financial fraud." Emma stood at the prosecutor's table, her presentation meticulously prepared. Over the past months, she'd become the face of financial justice reform, her prosecution of Jake earning national recognition. "Your Honor," Emma said, "the defendant orchestrated a conspiracy that defrauded investors of over $200 million, manipulated financial markets using artificial intelligence, and when confronted with exposure, attempted to murder his pregnant wife. The attempted murder charges had been the most serious. Sarah's recording of Jake and Ashley's plan to kill her, captured by both her personal device and the FBI surveillance equipment, provided irrefutable evidence of premeditated conspiracy. Ashley Chen had already been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to attempted murder. Her testimony against Jake had been devastating, revealing the full scope of their criminal partnership. "Mrs. Matthews," Judge Chen said, "would you like to address the court before sentencing?" Sarah stood, adjusting Alexander in her arms. Her son was healthy, beautiful, and completely unaware that his father was a convicted felon. She'd legally changed both their names back to Matthews, ensuring Alexander would never carry the Montgomery legacy. "Your Honor, my husband told me to act classy while he brought his mistress into our home and planned to steal millions from innocent investors. He told me to act classy while he systematically destroyed my credibility and had me committed to a psychiatric facility. He told me to act classy while he planned to murder me and our unborn child." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Sarah's voice was calm, clear, and utterly unforgiving. "I learned that true class isn't about staying quiet when you're being abused. It's about having the courage to fight back with intelligence, evidence, and the law. True class is protecting your child from a criminal father. True class is ensuring that victims get justice." She looked directly at Jake, who stared back with undisguised hatred. Jake thought he owned me because he'd convinced me to give up my career for his success. He thought he could control me because he'd isolated me from my professional identity. He was wrong on both counts. Sarah paused, letting her words sink in. "I spent my career as an investigative journalist exposing powerful men who believed they were above the law. Marriage didn't change my skills. It just gave me a more personal motivation to use them." The gallery erupted in applause. Judge Chen allowed it to continue for several moments before calling for order. "Mr. Montgomery," the judge said. You have been convicted of securities fraud, conspiracy, market manipulation, money laundering, and attempted murder. These crimes represent a level of callousness and premeditation that demands the harshest possible sentence. Jake's attorney had argued for leniency, claiming his client's actions were driven by business pressure and mental stress. The argument had fallen flat against the overwhelming evidence of calculated criminality. I hereby sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Additionally, you will forfeit all assets connected to your criminal enterprise, with proceeds distributed to victims through a court-supervised restitution fund. Jake's face remained expressionless, but Sarah saw his hands tremble slightly. 25 years would make him an old man when he was released. By then, Alexander would be a grown adult who might never choose to know his biological father. As the marshals led Jake away, he turned back toward Sarah one final time. His mouth moved silently, but she could read his lips. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Sarah smiled and mouthed back, You should have remembered who you married. After the hearing, Sarah stood on the courthouse steps with Emma and her legal team. Reporters shouted questions about the case, about her experience, about her plans for the future. Mrs. Matthews, what's next for you and Alexander? Sarah adjusted her son in her arms, thinking about the question. The restitution settlement had left her financially secure. Her consulting work with the FBI on financial crimes had proven fulfilling. Most importantly, she'd reclaimed her identity as an investigative professional. Alexander and I are starting fresh, she said. I'm launching an independent investigative firm focused on exposing financial crimes. There are too many Jake Montgomerys in the world, and not enough people willing to stop them. Any advice for other women in similar situations? Sarah considered the question carefully. Don't let anyone convince you that your survival depends on staying quiet. Sometimes the classiest thing you can do is refuse to be destroyed. As she walked away from the courthouse, carrying her son toward their new life, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Jake had tried to erase her, to transform her from an accomplished professional into a decorative accessory. He'd nearly succeeded, but he'd forgotten the fundamental truth about strong women. They might bend under pressure, but they rarely break. And when they fight back, they fight to win. Sarah Matthews had acted classy, all right, just not in the way her criminal husband had expected. 2 years after Jake's sentencing, Sarah stood in her new office overlooking the Georgetown waterfront, reviewing case files for Matthews Investigative Solutions. Her company had become the premier financial crime consultancy on the East Coast, with clients ranging from federal prosecutors to corporate whistleblowers. Alexander played on the carpet nearby, building towers with colorful blocks and chattering in the nonsensical language of toddlers. At 2 years old, he was bright, curious, and completely unaware of the darkness that had surrounded his birth. Sarah's assistant, Maria, knocked on the office door. Your 3 o'clock is here. Rebecca Patterson from the Phoenix Group case. Sarah nodded, straightening her jacket. The Phoenix Group investigation was her biggest case yet, a cryptocurrency scheme that had defrauded pension funds across 6 states. Rebecca Patterson was the accountant who discovered the fraud and was now facing retaliation from her former employer. Mrs. Matthews, Rebecca said as she entered. Thank you for seeing me. I know your reputation, and I'm hoping you can help. Rebecca was young, maybe 28, with the nervous energy of someone who'd stumbled onto something dangerous. Sarah recognized the type honest professionals who discovered corruption and suddenly found themselves isolated, discredited, and threatened. Tell me about the Phoenix Group, Sarah said, settling into her chair. I've been their senior accountant for 3 years. Last month, I discovered that they've been using client pension funds to cover losses in high-risk cryptocurrency trading. When I reported it internally, they claimed I was mistaken. When I persisted, they started questioning my mental health. Sarah's expression darkened. The pattern was familiar. Depressingly so. What kind of retaliation are you facing? They've placed me on administrative leave pending a psychiatric evaluation. They're claiming I've been making erratic accusations, that the stress of my job has caused paranoid delusions. And the evidence, Rebecca opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Transaction records, email communications, recordings of meetings where executives discussed using pension funds as temporary liquidity solutions. I have everything documented. Sarah reviewed the materials, her experienced eye quickly identifying the scope of the fraud. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. It was theft from retirees, teachers, and public servants who trusted their futures to pension fund managers. Rebecca, what you've uncovered is a federal crime affecting thousands of victims, but I need to ask you a difficult question. Are you prepared for what comes next? What do you mean? Fighting powerful criminals requires sacrifice. They'll attack your reputation, your credibility, your mental health. They'll try to destroy your life before they let you destroy theirs. I need to know if you're strong enough to see this through. Rebecca's jaw tightened with determination. Those pension funds represent the life savings of people who worked for 30 years believing their money was safe. If I don't fight for them, who will? Sarah smiled, recognizing the fire she'd once carried as an investigative journalist. Then let's get to work. Over the next hour, Sarah outlined a comprehensive strategy for exposing the Phoenix Group while protecting Rebecca from retaliation. The plan drew on everything Sarah had learned from her own experience: the importance of multiple evidence sources, the need for unimpeachable allies, and the crucial timing of public disclosure. The most important lesson I can share, Sarah concluded, is that your integrity is your greatest weapon. Criminals like those at Phoenix Group rely on good people staying quiet. When you refuse to be silenced, you become their worst nightmare. As Rebecca left to begin implementing their plan, Sarah felt the familiar satisfaction of meaningful work. Each case was different, but the underlying truth remained constant. Corrupt, powerful people could only survive in darkness. Bringing them into the light was her specialty. Maria appeared in the doorway again. Your 4:30 canceled, and Alexander's getting cranky. Maybe time to head home. Sarah looked at her son, who was indeed showing signs of toddler fatigue. Perfect timing. We have dinner plans anyway. The dinner was at Emma's house in Arlington. Despite the complicated history between the sisters, they'd rebuilt their relationship stronger than before. Emma's experience prosecuting Jake had taught her valuable lessons about listening to alleged victims, even when their credibility seemed questionable. "How's the Phoenix Group case?" Emma asked as they sat on her back deck, watching Alexander chase fireflies in the twilight. "Textbook corporate theft dressed up as investment strategy," Sarah replied. "The accountant who discovered it reminds me of myself 3 years ago, smart, principled, and completely unprepared for how dirty her employers will fight." "Will you be able to protect her?" Sarah considered the question. "I'll teach her to protect herself. That's more valuable in the long run." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Alexander's delighted pursuit of the blinking insects. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Saw the news about Phoenix Group investigation. Impressed by your work. Would love to discuss a case that might interest you. Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI Financial Crimes." Sarah showed the message to Emma, who whistled softly. "Jen Walsh is legendary. If she's reaching out personally, it must be something big. Bigger than pension fund fraud. Think international money laundering, cryptocurrency cartels. The kind of cases that make careers. Sarah typed back, happy to discuss. When and where? The reply came immediately. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., FBI Washington Field Office. Bring your clearance paperwork. As they drove home later that evening, Alexander sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Sarah reflected on the unexpected trajectory of her life. 3 years ago, she'd been a discredited psychiatric patient whose own sister didn't believe her. Tonight, she was a federal consultant being recruited for major international cases. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had required months of careful work to rebuild her professional reputation, years of therapy to process the trauma of Jake's betrayal, and ongoing vigilance to protect herself and Alexander from the lingering effects of their ordeal. But the work was worth it. Every case she solved, every criminal she exposed, every victim she helped felt like a small victory against the Jake Montgomerys of the world. Her phone rang as she pulled into her driveway. The caller ID showed Dr. Patricia Reeves, her former obstetrician who'd become a close friend. Sarah, I hope I'm not calling too late. I have something I think you'd want to know. What's up, Pat? I just finished a consultation with a patient who sounds very familiar. Successful businesswoman, suspicious of her husband's financial dealings. Everyone thinks she's being paranoid. Sound familiar? Sarah felt her investigative instincts activate. How can I help? Would you be willing to speak with her? Sometimes hearing from someone who's been through similar circumstances can make all the difference. Of course. Have her call me tomorrow. As Sarah carried sleeping Alexander upstairs to his nursery, she thought about the cyclical nature of her work. Jake's attempt to destroy her had ultimately created her life's mission, helping other women find their voices and fight back against powerful abusers. She tucked Alexander into his crib, watching his peaceful face in the soft nightlight glow. He would grow up knowing that his mother was strong, that she'd faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. More importantly, he'd learn that true strength came from protecting others, not exploiting them. Sweet dreams, baby, she whispered. Mommy's got work to do. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, new opportunities to ensure that justice prevailed over corruption. Sarah Matthews had learned to act classy by refusing to stay silent, by fighting back with intelligence and determination, and by never forgetting that her survival depended not on others' approval, but on her own unshakable integrity. The frightened, isolated woman who discovered her husband's affair during a live stream was gone. In her place stood a formidable investigator, a devoted mother, and a woman who transformed her greatest betrayal into her most powerful weapon. Jake Montgomery had wanted a decorative wife who would stay quiet and act classy. Instead, he'd created his own destruction in the form of a woman who'd learned that the classiest thing she could do was refuse to be destroyed. And Sarah Matthews was just getting started. If Sarah's incredible journey from victim to victor inspired you, smash that like button. And let me know in the comments, would you have had the courage to fight back like Sarah did? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they think. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of people who refuse to stay silent. Hit that notification bell because, trust me, you won't want to miss what we're covering next. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the classiest thing you can do is refuse to be destroyed.